You think you're sabotaging yourself because you lack discipline. You think the problem is that you're weak, that you just need to try harder, be stronger, push through. But here's what nobody tells you. Your emotions aren't sabotaging you because you're weak. They're sabotaging you because they're doing exactly what they were designed to do. And until you understand that, until you really get why your emotional system works the way it does, you're going to keep fighting a battle you can't win. Let me ask you something. How many times have you made a plan, a really good plan, something you knew would work, and then when the moment came to execute it, you just didn't? Maybe it was a business decision. Maybe it was a difficult conversation you needed to have. Maybe it was sticking to a commitment you made to yourself. You knew what you needed to do. The logic was clear. The path was obvious. But something inside you pulled you in a different direction, and afterwards, you beat yourself up. You called yourself undisciplined, lazy, self-destructive. You promised yourself it would be different next time. But when next time came, the same thing happened again. Here's what's really going on. Your emotional system isn't broken. It's actually working perfectly. The problem is that it's working for a version of you that doesn't exist anymore, for a world that you don't live in. Your emotional responses were calibrated over millions of years of evolution for one primary purpose: keeping you alive, not making you successful, not making you happy, not helping you achieve your goals. Just keeping you alive long enough to reproduce and pass on your genes. That's the whole job description. And in the environment where these emotional responses were forged, immediate survival was everything. If you saw a rustling in the grass, your ancestors didn't stop to analyze whether it was the wind or a predator. The ones who paused to think about it got eaten. The ones who felt that spike of fear and immediately ran, they survived. So your brain learned to prioritize emotional responses over rational analysis because in that world, hesitation meant death. But here's the problem. You don't live in that world anymore. The threats you face aren't immediate and physical. They're abstract and delayed. The consequences of your decisions don't show up in the next 30 seconds. They show up in 30 days, or 30 months, or 30 years. But your emotional system doesn't know that. It's still responding as if every uncomfortable feeling is a threat to your immediate survival. And that's why it keeps sabotaging you. Let me paint you a picture of what this actually looks like. You need to have a difficult conversation with someone, maybe an employee who isn't performing, maybe a partner about something that's bothering you, maybe a client about a problem. Logically, you know this conversation needs to happen. You know that avoiding it will only make things worse. But as the moment approaches, you feel something in your chest, a tightness, a knot of anxiety. Your heart rate increases. Your mind starts generating reasons to postpone. Maybe it's not the right time. Maybe you should wait until you have more information. Maybe it'll resolve itself. What's happening in that moment isn't a failure of discipline. It's your emotional system detecting a threat. In your ancestors' world, social conflict could mean being cast out from the tribe, which meant death. So your brain learned to fear anything that might create social tension. It doesn't matter that in your modern context, having this conversation won't lead to your death. Your emotional system doesn't care about context. It just knows that this situation triggers the same neural pathways that used to mean danger, so it floods you with anxiety to make you avoid it. And here's where it gets really insidious. You interpret that anxiety as information. You think it's telling you something meaningful about the situation. You mistake an evolutionary alarm system for rational intuition. So you listen to it, you postpone the conversation, and immediately, you feel relief. That relief feels good, really good. Your brain registers that avoiding the uncomfortable thing made the bad feeling go away, and it files that away as a successful strategy. Avoidance worked. Let's do that again next time. But what actually happened? Did avoiding the conversation solve the problem? Of course not. It made it worse. The issue you needed to address is still there, probably getting bigger. But your emotional system doesn't care about that because those consequences are delayed. All it knows is that avoidance made the immediate discomfort disappear. Do you see the trap? Your emotions aren't sabotaging you because they're malfunctioning. They're sabotaging you because they're functioning perfectly for the wrong environment. Let's talk about another scenario. You set a goal for yourself, something important, something that would genuinely improve your life. Maybe it's building a business. Maybe it's getting in shape. Maybe it's developing a new skill. You're excited about it. You create a plan. Day 1 comes, and you're full of motivation. You execute. Day 2, same thing. Day 3, still going strong. Then day 4 or 5 or 6, something changes. The excitement wears off. The work starts feeling tedious. You don't feel like doing it anymore. And this is where most people think the problem is motivation. But motivation isn't the problem. What's happening is that your emotional system is registering that this new behavior requires effort and discomfort, and it's asking a very simple question: why are we doing this hard thing when we could be doing something easy and comfortable? From your emotional brain's perspective, expending energy without an immediate payoff is dangerous. In the ancestral environment, energy was scarce. Food wasn't guaranteed. So your brain evolved to resist sustained effort toward distant goals. It wants you to conserve energy. It wants you to take the easy path. It wants you to feel uncomfortable enough that you stop doing the hard thing and go back to what's familiar. And here's what makes this particularly brutal. The more important the goal is to you, the more emotional resistance you'll face. Because big goals require sustained discomfort. They require change. And your emotional system hates change because change equals uncertainty, and uncertainty used to equal danger. So the very goals that could transform your life are the ones your emotions will fight hardest against. It's not that you don't want it badly enough. It's that your emotional system is designed to protect you from the discomfort that achieving it requires. Think about procrastination for a second. Everyone treats procrastination like it's a time management problem or a laziness problem. But it's not. It's an emotional regulation problem. You procrastinate on tasks that create negative emotions: anxiety, overwhelm, fear of failure, fear of judgment. The task itself might only take 20 minutes, but the emotional discomfort of starting it feels intolerable, so you avoid it. You tell yourself you'll do it later, when you feel more ready, but later never comes because the emotional discomfort doesn't go away with time. If anything, it compounds because now you're also dealing with guilt and shame about procrastinating. What's your emotional system doing in this scenario? It's protecting you from discomfort. It sees that starting the task will make you feel bad. So it steers you toward literally anything else: checking social media, reorganizing your desk, making another cup of coffee, anything that provides a small hit of comfort or distraction. And every time you follow that urge, you reinforce the pattern. You teach your brain that avoiding uncomfortable tasks leads to feeling better, which makes it even harder to override that impulse next time. Here's what most people don't understand about emotions. They think emotions are reactions to situations, that something happens, and then you feel a certain way about it. But it's not that simple. Your emotional system is constantly running predictive models, trying to anticipate what's going to happen based on past experience. It's not responding to what is happening, it's responding to what it thinks might happen. And what it thinks might happen is heavily influenced by what has happened before. This is why you can have an emotional reaction to something that hasn't even occurred yet. You think about having that difficult conversation, and you feel anxious, even though the conversation hasn't happened. You think about starting that project, and you feel overwhelmed, even though you haven't started yet. Your emotional system is pulling up past experiences of similar situations, remembering how they felt, and generating those feelings preemptively to try to protect you from potential threat. The problem is that your emotional system has terrible pattern recognition. It operates on very crude associations. Had a bad experience giving a presentation once? Now, all presentations feel threatening. Got rejected when you expressed your needs in a relationship. Now expressing needs in any relationship feels dangerous. Failed at a business venture? Now starting any new venture triggers fear. Your emotional system doesn't understand nuance or context. It just knows that this situation feels similar to that time you got hurt, so it's going to make you feel bad enough that you avoid it. And here's where this gets really complicated. Your emotions create a feedback loop with your thoughts. You feel anxious, and your mind immediately starts generating thoughts that justify and amplify that anxiety. You're not good enough. It's not going to work. People will judge you. You're going to fail. These thoughts aren't objective observations. They're your rational mind trying to make sense of the emotional state you're already in. But you experience them as truth, as rational analysis, and so you make decisions based on them. You avoid the opportunity. You play it safe. You stay in your comfort zone, and your emotional system logs another successful threat avoidance. Let's talk about anger for a moment, because anger is one of the most misunderstood emotions when it comes to self-sabotage. People think anger is about the situation in front of them, that person who cut them off in traffic, that colleague who took credit for their work, that partner who forgot something important. But anger is almost never about the present moment. Anger is your emotional system's response to feeling threatened or invalidated. It's a defense mechanism, a way of making you feel powerful when you actually feel vulnerable. Think about the last time you got really angry about something relatively minor. Maybe someone criticized you, and you felt a surge of rage that seemed disproportionate to the situation. What was really happening? That criticism triggered feelings of shame or inadequacy, feelings that are deeply uncomfortable, feelings that make you feel small and vulnerable. Your emotional system doesn't like feeling vulnerable because vulnerable means unsafe. So it immediately converts that vulnerability into anger because anger feels powerful. Anger feels like control. Anger makes you feel big instead of small. But here's how this sabotages you. When you're in that angry state, you do things you wouldn't normally do. You say things you don't mean. You damage relationships. You make impulsive decisions. You burn bridges. And later, when you calm down, you regret it. You can't believe you reacted that way. But in the moment, your emotional system hijacked your behavior to protect you from feeling vulnerable, and the cost was significant damage to something that mattered to you. Here's the really challenging truth about all of this. You can't logic your way out of emotional responses. You can understand everything I'm telling you. You can have complete insight into why your emotions work the way they do, and you'll still feel the feelings. You'll still have the urges. You'll still experience the anxiety and the fear and the anger and the shame. Knowledge doesn't make emotions go away. But here's what knowledge can do. It can help you create space between the feeling and the action. That space is everything. When you understand that the anxiety you're feeling about starting that project isn't information about the project, it's just your emotional system being overly protective, you can feel the anxiety and start anyway. When you recognize that the anger you're feeling is actually covering up vulnerability, you can feel the anger and choose not to lash out. When you see that the urge to procrastinate is an emotional regulation strategy, not a reflection of your laziness, you can feel the discomfort and do the task anyway. The emotion doesn't go away, but your relationship to it changes. It stops being a command and becomes just information, just sensation, something you can observe without automatically obeying. So, what's the truth about why your emotions keep sabotaging you? They're not sabotaging you because you're broken or weak or undisciplined. They're sabotaging you because they're operating on programming that's millions of years old, designed for a world that no longer exists, trying to protect you from threats that aren't real anymore, using strategies that don't work in your modern context. Your emotional system is doing its job. The problem is that the job description is obsolete. And until you understand that, until you stop treating your emotions as the enemy and start treating them as an outdated protection system that means well, but needs to be overridden with conscious choice, you're going to keep being confused about why you can't just do what you know you should do. The answer has always been right there in your chest, in that tightness, in that resistance, in those feelings you've been trying so hard to ignore or overcome. Your emotions aren't the problem. Your relationship with your emotions is. And that, finally, is something you can actually change.